go. Alrighty, hello early on families and good morning and welcome back to another Cook With Me. Today I am going to be showing you how to make cheesy crackers. So some things you're going to need are some parchment paper, some flour, some cheese here. I'm going to be using just cheddar cheese, but you can use any kind of cheese you'd like. You're also going to need some Parmesan cheese, unsalted butter, and then as well, you're going to need a bowl, a cheese grater, some tablespoons, so some small measuring cups, as well as you're going to need either a rolling pin or a plastic cup, depending on what you have available to you, another measuring cup, a spatula, some cookie cutters so I can get a nice circle. I'm going to be using just an empty cheese holder, but if you'd like to use some different shapes, you're more than welcome to use some. Oops, sorry, I just have my finished product all set here. So just gonna turn that off, and once we're all done, we can see what they look like. Oh, sorry about that. There we go. Oh my goodness, so sorry. Anyways, so let's get started. So some things you're gonna need are, you're gonna need a cup of grated cheese. So I already have some cheese pre-grated here with my clean hands I'm going to be picking up, and I'm going to be adding it into this bowl here in the front because my food processor is just in the back over here, still in camera view, but unfortunately that's the only plug in my kitchen. So when you're doing this at home, it's a lot easier to do it closer to your blender or your food processor. That way you can get everything all together. So I'm just gonna grate a bit more cheese. Alrighty, and of course this can either be parent supervised depending on the child's age. It's great for fine motor as well as gross motor, as well as many other aspects of this Cook With Me are great for your child's fine motor and gross motor. Alrighty, so there's the extra cheese. So I have all my cheese ready to go. The next thing I'm going to be adding is 4 tablespoons of unsalted butter. So I already went ahead and I pre-melted some butter ahead of time. So I'm just gonna take my tablespoon and I'm gonna dip it in there. So there's 1, 2, 3, and 4. There we go. Now I do have some extra left over, but I'll be leaving that for a bit later on. So the next thing we're gonna be adding is a 1/4 cup of Parmesan. So I have my Parmesan here. And just like my last video when I mentioned that I like to go into the product, it's the same here. But unfortunately, you have to be a little creative with this one, depending on your size. So sometimes I also like to pour over the bowl so that anything we need is going into the bowl that we're using. All right, so there's a little there, and then I'm just gonna take a teaspoon and sort of just grind it up just a little more because sometimes Parmesan likes to stick together. So there we go. All right. There we are, and I didn't do a full cup because the little that I had in there I already poured in. So there's the rest. And now we can put this off to the side. All right, so now we're going to need a 1/3 cup. Ooh. There we go. My apologies once again for the little beeping behind me, but I believe I have it all figured out now. Alrighty, so we're going to get our, our flour. So we need 3/4 of a cup. So I'm just gonna go up to here. As you can see, I still have a bit of flour residue left over from earlier. So I'm just going to add it up to that point. And then I like to shake it and give it a little tap to make sure it's all flat. Alrighty, put that to the side because we will need it later. Alright, so I've added the flour now. And the last thing we will need is a teaspoon of salt. Now, this can be up to your preference. You can choose to do less, you can choose to add a little more. It all depends on what your and your family's taste buds are. So I'm just going to add just a teaspoon of salt. And once again, me and my family, we like to use Himalayan salt, so that's the kind of salt that I'm using today. But you can use whatever salt you have available to you, whether it's table salt or Himalayan salt. So before I put in the processor, I'm just gonna give it a quick little mix around. Alrighty, so this is what it will look like before I put it in my food processor. So I'm just gonna go over here, move that out of the way, and I'm going to put it in my processor. Make sure it gets all around. Some up here. There we go. Alrighty. Once it's all in, I'm just gonna add my lid. Make sure it's on nice and tight, and I'm just gonna pulse it. Alrighty, so I can see that I might have to add a little bit more butter, and that's why I did leave some extra here. So I'm just going to go ahead and add another tablespoon of butter. And that kind of just helps bring everything together. So just like the salt, this depends on your family's taste buds and how your family likes their food. If they like it really buttery, then you can add more butter. If they're not a fan of butter, you can add less. Once again, it's up to you and your family's idea of what you guys like to eat. Sorry. Ready? Just gonna add a bit more butter. Like I said, it's a little bit of a work in progress. You kind of have to judge for yourself on how much butter or salt that you'd like to add. This is really good too. If you do have a food processor or a blender, it's really good for your children to use because it is safe to use. Because they do have those guards up where you can't touch the blade that's in there. So it's really good for their fine motor pressing the button. Because I know for me, I do have to kind of press a little bit just on my food processor. So if you have the same, or if you have a blender, it'll be really great for your child's fine motor skills, as well as for their attention and their engagement within this activity or this cook with me. Because what kid does not like to grind up food and make a mess, right? So let's get to it. Alrighty, that's perfect. So I'm gonna move my parchment paper over here now. Perfect. So we got that. And now we've got our dough, which I'm just removing the blade from my processor so that it doesn't fall out onto our paper here. So from this point, you would take some plastic wrap and form this into a ball and let it refrigerate for 30 minutes. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to wrap this up and I'm going to place it over to the side, just like so. And like I mentioned, I have some leftovers from my previous one that's been sitting in the fridge for about 30 minutes now. So I'm just gonna grab some parchment paper, rip off a sheet, and I'm going to be taking this out of the bag. But before I place it on the parchment paper, I'm going to take a little pinch of some flour. I'm going to rub it on my hands and then onto the parchment paper as well. This is a very important step because if you don't flour both your hands, the paper, as well as the rolling pin or glass that you're going to be using, the dough is just going to stick to it and it's not going to roll out flat. It'll get stuck to either the rolling pin, your hands, or the glass. So as I mentioned, just flouring everything up so it doesn't stick. Perfect, making sure I got flour all on there. Perfect, so now we can take our ball, and I like to squish it a bit first, and then I like to go with my rolling pin and roll it out. Again, as I mentioned, really good for your child's fine motor skills, as well as their gross motor skills. Rolled it out a little too thin on one part, but that's okay. So once you've had it rolled out, it should look something like this. And I'm just going to go ahead and take my form of a cookie cutter and just cut out little cracker rounds. Now, depending on how many you would like to make, you can get quite a few from this recipe, but just like gingerbread cookies or any other fun little festive activities, the rest of the dough that you have left over, you can always roll out and make some more. But for our live, there we go, for the purpose of our live, I'm just going to be using the few that I have cut out here and put them in the oven. And I'm going to take out our final product as well. There we go. So once you place your product in the oven, you're gonna wanna bake it for about 10 to 15 minutes or until they're a nice, crispy, golden brownish color. So just so I can grab it with both hands, I'm going to also grab just a little cloth here so I don't burn myself. And that's what they should look like when they come out of the oven. So before serving, you are just gonna wanna wait approximately 2 to 3 minutes just so they cool off and they're not too hot to touch or eat. And that, my friends, is how you can make cheesy crackers. I hope my friends have a wonderful time making these fun little treats, as well as I hope you enjoy all of the mess and the fun that it makes to make these treats. Alrighty friends, bye-bye. Have a great day.